They mocked me for being the broke kid who would never make it, but what they didn't know was that I had already signed the papers for my very first house. Before I continue, make sure you hit that subscribe button, share this story, and stay until the end, because the twist will leave you speechless. Growing up, my relatives never missed a chance to remind me how useless I was. I started working shifts at a diner when I was just 16, scrubbing floors and washing dishes while my cousins got allowances for doing nothing. They laughed at me for smelling like grease after work, but every dollar I earned went straight into savings. No handouts, no loans, no one ever sliding me a dime when things got hard. While my friends partied on weekends, I stacked plates, saved tips, and studied late into the night. By the time graduation came, I had quietly paid off my entire college tuition without borrowing a single cent. Nobody believed me when I said I didn't need student loans. They thought I was lying. Even my own uncle sneered, "Jamie, stop pretending. People like us don't get degrees without debt." But I stayed silent, letting their words cut while I kept pushing forward. And then came the day I walked into a real estate office, signing a deal that would change everything. What no one in my family knew was that the kid they mocked for being poor was about to hold the keys to something they couldn't even dream of. When I showed up at the family dinner that night, I could feel every eye on me. They weren't looking with love. They were scanning me like I was still that broke teenager who couldn't afford lunch at school. My aunt leaned over and whispered loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Jamie, did you finally get tired of waiting tables? Or are you still scraping by?" The table erupted in laughter. They loved humiliating me, as if tearing me down made them feel taller. I kept calm, even though inside my blood boiled. I had just closed on my first home, a 2-story house with hardwood floors, a backyard, and a view I had once only seen in magazines. But instead of announcing it right away, I let them keep talking. My cousin Brandon bragged about his promotion at the office, even though everyone knew his dad pulled strings to get him the job. He smirked at me and said, "Don't worry, Jamie. One day maybe you'll get lucky like me." The arrogance in his voice made my jaw tighten, but I forced a smile. My mom sat silently, avoiding my eyes, as if she had already accepted their version of me, the underdog who would never catch up. That cut deeper than all the insults. I wanted to shout the truth, to slam the house keys on the table, but I remembered how many years I had been underestimated. I wanted my moment to land like thunder, not a whisper. So I asked casual questions instead, pushing them further into their arrogance. "Brandon, how much did that promotion pay again?" He puffed his chest and announced his salary like he was a millionaire. The others clapped for him, praising his success, while side eyes darted toward me, expecting me to shrink lower in my seat. But then my aunt, the same one who used to scold me for not being grateful enough when she gave me old clothes, leaned forward with a cruel smirk. "So, Jamie, what's your big achievement this year? Another free refill at the diner?" The table burst into laughter so loud the waiter glanced over. I clenched my fists under the table. They thought I was nothing. They thought I had nothing. And in that very moment I realized, when I finally revealed the truth, the shock on their faces would be worth every insult I had ever swallowed. And trust me, the reveal was coming sooner than they thought. I leaned back in my chair, letting their laughter echo around the room like knives. My chest tightened, but instead of breaking, I felt a fire rising inside me. For years, I had let their words define me. Tonight, I decided I'd let my actions speak louder. The waiter returned with the check, and of course, Brandon grabbed it first. "Relax, everyone," he said proudly. "I've got this. My new promotion means I can finally take care of the family." He looked straight at me while saying it, making sure I felt the sting. My aunt patted his hand, saying, "See, Jamie, that's what real success looks like." I couldn't hold it anymore. My heart pounded, and before I could stop myself, I said calmly, "Actually, why don't I take care of it?" The table went silent. Forks froze in midair. Brandon smirked. "Jamie, are you sure? The bill's not cheap. Don't embarrass yourself." Without another word, I pulled out my card and handed it to the waiter. Not just any card. a platinum card that gleamed under the light. My uncle squinted at it, his laughter choking in his throat. "Where did you get that?" he asked suspiciously. I shrugged. "Earned it." "Just like I earned everything else." Their faces shifted. The same people who mocked me seconds ago were suddenly whispering, confused, uneasy. But that wasn't the big reveal. That was just the opening act. I let the tension build as the waiter took my card. My aunt crossed her arms, saying, "So what? You got one nice card. Doesn't mean you're successful." Brandon chuckled nervously, adding, "Yeah, probably borrowed it." I smiled slowly and said, "Borrowed? Funny you should say that. Because tomorrow morning, I'll be moving into my own place." Their jaws tightened. I leaned forward, voice steady. "Not a rented apartment. Not a room in someone's basement. A house! Mine! Paid for with my own money." The silence that followed was louder than their laughter had ever been. My mom's eyes widened, tears forming as if she couldn't believe it. My uncle dropped his fork. Brandon forced out a laugh, but it cracked halfway. My aunt shook her head, muttering, "You're lying. Someone like you doesn't just buy a house." And then I slid the keys from my pocket and placed them gently on the table. The metallic clink echoed like a thunderclap. Every eye locked on them, and I swear I saw my cousin's face turn pale. But that was just the beginning. They had no idea what else I was about to reveal. The silence stretched so long you could hear the ice melting in their glasses. My aunt's smirk vanished, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Brandon leaned forward, his voice sharp. "There's no way." "You buying a house? Stop lying. Tell us whose name is really on those papers." I stared straight at him, calm and collected, and said, "The name on those papers is mine, Jamie Collins. Every cent that went into it came from years of working while you laughed at me. No loans, no handouts. Just me." The table erupted. My uncle slammed his fist down, red with anger. "Impossible. You've been broke your whole life. Don't try to make us fools." I almost laughed at that, because for years they had treated me like I was the fool. And now, the roles were finally reversed. Brandon's fake confidence cracked. "Even if it's true, so what? It's probably some cheap house in a rundown neighborhood." He wanted to tear me down, but I was ready. I pulled out my phone, swiped to the photos, and turned the screen toward them. Wide windows, polished wood floors, a yard big enough for barbecues and family gatherings. My dream turned real, their mouths dropped. My aunt muttered under her breath, "That can't be his." My mom's hand trembled as she reached for the phone, her eyes filling with tears as she whispered, "Jamie, you really did this?" For the first time in years, she wasn't ashamed of me. She was proud. And that alone was worth more than the house. But not everyone felt that way. Brandon's face burned red. "You think this makes you better than me?" His voice cracked with desperation. He had always been the golden boy, flaunting his father's money, his fake promotions, his easy life. My success wasn't just shocking him. It was destroying the image he'd built for himself. I leaned in closer, voice steady but sharp. "Better than you? No, but unlike you, I don't need someone else's money to stand on my own 2 feet. Everything I own, I earned. While you mocked me, I built something real." The whole table froze. For once, no one had a comeback. They couldn't laugh, they couldn't mock, because the truth was staring them in the face, and it terrified them. But just when I thought I had silenced them, Brandon smirked again and said something that turned the whole night upside down. Brandon's smirk widened, but this time it wasn't confidence, it was desperation. He leaned back in his chair, eyes darting around the table as if searching for allies. Then he said loudly, "Well, if you really bought that house, it's only fair you give back what you owe this family. After all, Aunt Linda raised you when your dad left. You should pay her for everything she spent on you. $50,000 at least." The room gasped. My chest tightened. I stared at him, stunned, but my aunt was quick to nod, her voice dripping with fake authority. "That's right. I fed you, gave you clothes, and made sure you didn't end up on the streets. You think that was free? If you have money for a house, you can pay me back now." Laughter turned to greed in an instant. My uncle added, "It's only fair, Jamie. Family helps each other. And now it's your turn to return the favor." Even my cousins started chiming in, throwing numbers around as if they were calculating how much I owed them for simply existing. For a moment, I felt that old sinking feeling, the one I used to carry when I was younger, believing I wasn't good enough, believing I always had to prove myself. But then something inside me snapped. I had carried their insults for years, swallowed their cruelty, and now they were trying to cash in on my success like parasites. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The entire table went quiet. I looked each of them in the eye and said, "You want me to pay for the insults? For the nights I cried myself to sleep because you made me feel worthless? For the years you called me a failure while I worked myself to the bone? No, you don't get a dime from me." My aunt's face turned red. "How dare you?" I cut her off, my voice rising with every word. "No, how dare you? You never raised me out of love. You threw scraps at me and called it charity. You mocked me while I scrubbed dishes at 16. You laughed when I said I'd graduate debt-free. And you humiliated me tonight thinking I'd never be more than a waiter. And now that I've succeeded, you want to collect a bill? Family doesn't charge interest on love, and you gave me none." The silence was so thick you could hear Brandon swallow. My mom's eyes brimmed with tears, but this time they weren't of shame. They were of pride. She whispered, "Jamie, don't let them take this moment from you." I picked up my keys from the table, letting them jingle in the stunned silence. "This house? It's mine. And unlike this table, it will be filled with real love, real respect, and people who actually believe in me. If any of you think you're owed something, let me be clear. What you're owed is the sight of me walking away stronger than ever." And with that, I turned and walked out. Behind me, I could hear their whispers turning into arguments, blaming each other, scrambling for excuses. But none of it mattered anymore. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the underdog at their table. I was the one who built everything they said I never could. And as I gripped the keys in my hand, I knew this wasn't just a house I was walking toward. It was proof that no amount of mockery, betrayal, or humiliation could stop me from creating the life they never believed I deserved. That night, I didn't just walk away with a home. I walked away with victory. And the best part, they had no choice but to choke on the taste of their own words.